Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is our final show of 2024. This has been an exciting year, an exhilarating year, and we are going to end the show today with a bang. We've got State Senator Suzette Valladares that's joining us right now. In fact, in just about 10 seconds, I'll have her on. And at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have Pastor Levi Secord from Christ Bible Church in Minnesota. And we're going to be talking about Christmas, whether it's pagan or not pagan. That is the question. So stick around for that discussion. But right now, we are excited to have and welcome to our show State Senator Suzette Valladares.
Hello, Pastor Cook. It's so great to hear your voice.
You know what?
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that somebody would actually say that, so I appreciate that. That's like a Merry Christmas all in of itself right there. So.
Oh wait, is this being recorded?
Yes, and you're live, You know what? You'll never win. You'll never win re-election again. So, well, first of all, congratulations on a robust win for District 23. Thank you also for sparing us being represented by Kip Muller. And let me just ask you the question, Suzette. You've ran a successful campaign before. You've ran another successful campaign. What do you think was the magic sauce in this particular campaign that put you over Kip Muller?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to be a gracious winner. And I do and did extend my thank you to my opponent, Kip Muller, for running for office. It is not easy to decide to run for office, to put yourself out there and leave yourself and your personal life choices and family to scrutiny. It's not easy. So I do want to thank him for being in the arena. What made the difference for me? I think there are lots of things that made the difference. In this race. This is, one of the toughest races I've ever ran for sure. There was a lot of money spent in this race. I think amongst all sides, there was probably it's my understanding, there was about $13 million that were spent in this race.
Wow.
For, a lot of money. Some other states spend that on congressional races, or less on congressional races. And I think the difference for me, though, was oddly enough, it was losing my assembly race in 2022. One, I learned from losing. We all know, I say it all the time, I lost by 522 votes. But what never surprises me is it's always in God's plan. And had I not lost that race and had I not been able to learn from that, there would have been a different outcome, I believe, one. Two, it allowed me, not having to be in Sacramento the past 2 years, really gave me the opportunity to connect with the newer communities of the district. So the district is in Santa Clarita, but it goes out into the high desert, has Palmdale, Lancaster, Victorville, Adelanto, Lytle Creek in the mountain communities. And I was able to connect with every community. And lastly, I was able to talk about the issues that people care about, and more importantly, present solutions to the issues, not rhetoric, not, platitudes, actual policy solutions to address our high cost of living and the rising crime.
Well, again, congratulations, and I'm glad you were conciliatory towards Kip. Obviously, I disagree with Kip, but the fact of the matter is, it does take some tenacity, it takes some sacrifice to run a campaign, and so we salute Kip for putting his hat into the ring, no doubt about it. So, you are now in the state Senate, formerly the same seat that Scott Wilk has had for quite a few years. What are the main challenges that you are seeing now in the state of California? Before I allow you to answer that, the one thing I really want people like yourself and others that are in places of power here in California is, I think one of the things that need to be addressed is in our inability as a state to count votes. And I'm just wondering what can be done by you and some of your Republican colleagues to kind of put together something to kind of reform the way we count votes here in California.
Yeah, and you know what? In 2022, I didn't concede my race until it was November 30th because of that very reason. I have been up, I think, by over like 8,400 votes in 2022, the day after the election, and slowly, lost pretty much every batch of new votes that were counted. And there comes a point in every campaign when you look at the amount of ballots left to cure and count, and there comes a point where it's just about the math, right? Is the math going to add up? And for me, that took, up until November 30th in 2022. Fortunately, this cycle, we were up so far ahead that it was about a week and 2 days where we knew that we had a solid enough lead that we were going to win. And that's when my opponent called me actually to concede. And a lot of people are frustrated with this. I mean, in 2022, you also had a state Senate race that wasn't even decided until after the election was certified, right? So they didn't have their senators sworn in 2022. There were a lot of races this year. Let me just say, Republicans had a phenomenal year in California in the legislature and the state legislature. We picked up 2 seats in the Assembly. We picked up a seat in the Senate. And a lot of those races were not settled until less than a week before swearing in. It's a problem. It's not just a problem for Republicans. It's a problem for Democrats, too. And I do think there are going to be some policy solutions and mandates put on county registrars. And we'll see a lot of those pieces of policy probably hit next year when session officially begins on January 6th.
Well, that'd be great. I think our listeners, are just as frustrated as you folks are that are, sitting in the legislature and the state Senate. And, I think we just want something done because, here we were sitting watching the presidential returns on November 5th, and we were able to see a state like Florida, able to count their votes in a timely manner. We were able to know the outcome that night. The same thing for Georgia and, of course, for many other states. But yet when it came to California, when it came to states like Arizona, of course, we have no control of Arizona, but, of course, it's our neighbor to our east. We just can't count our votes. And I don't remember, and maybe I don't remember this happening in California in the 80s and 90s because I wasn't as engaged in the political process and I was too young to even to be aware of that. But it just seems it's increasingly gotten worse, especially since we've had Democratic governor after Democratic governor.
Yeah, and what's changed is, and I understand some of the reasoning behind some of the changes in election law and how we try and make it easy for people to vote, but making it easy shouldn't compromise the integrity or the process or the fair process, right? So what's changed, though, is, from our founding, we had, election day for hundreds of years, right? It was election day, first Tuesday in November. It's meant to be a day, the primary election day. That's no longer the case. And did we need to evolve? Absolutely. But in California, we don't just have election month. We practically have election quarter, right? So ballots are mailed out. Our military are actually mailed ballots first. They get their ballots about 6 weeks before the election. And then everyone can start voting about a month before the election is when ballots hit your mailbox. And what is also prolonged the counting and the election process is that you can also mail in your ballot, and as long as your ballot is post-dated and received by the registrar after 14 business days, it will be counted. So one of the frustrating parts on there, and again, there's got to be a balance between making it easy to vote, but also being efficient and thoughtful about a transparent process. One of the problems I see is that a ballot is considered postmarked or post-dated, I should say, if you yourself just write the date on that envelope.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily postmarked by the U.S. Postal Service. It's by whoever signed and dated the envelope. That's something we should be taking a look at, again, to make sure that the process is fair to everyone.
If you're just joining us here on Politics and the Pulpit, we are speaking with State Senator Suzette Valladares, representing District 23, won a resounding victory on November 5th. Suzette, now that you have been sworn in fact, you've been sworn in now for how long?
Oh, I think, been a whole 16 days.
Yeah, it's been about 2 weeks or so. What is the number one thing that Suzette Valladares has got on her bullseye that you'd like to get done in this first legislative session?
Oh, my goodness. So for me, my understanding my community, the issues that our community cares about most, and I think really the whole reason I was sent to represent our community in Sacramento is addressing the high and out of control cost of living in this state and our community.
Well, hallelujah.
Yes, things are too darn expensive, and you name it, we're paying way too much for it. So true to my campaign promises, and we're just getting started, on day one, December 2nd, I introduced a bill, Senate bill, I was going to say Assembly bill, but I'm in the Senate now.
Yeah.
A Senate Bill 23, and our bill is going to raise the exemption for our 100% disabled veterans to have their property tax exempt. They have given their life and limb. They have sacrificed so much for our country and for our freedom. It is a small token of gratitude, I believe, that we can do to say, hey, no property taxes on you. Thank you. We need to increase that limit, and it was the very first bill I introduced. I also introduced a bill with some of my Senate colleagues, Senator Rosalisi Ochoa-Bogue and Senator Shannon Grove, to say, guess what, y'all? In California, there should be no tax on tips. And this is bipartisan. President Trump ran on this issue. Vice President Kamala Harris ran on this issue. It should be a no-brainer. And this is going to put more money in the pockets of hard-working service industry folks that is so desperately needed right now. So again, making California affordable is a top priority for me.
One last question about our state here, Suzette. What can you folks do in the state Senate, and what can you do with your Republican colleagues to address the insurance debacle that's happening in our state here, not only with fire insurance and things of that nature? I think I made you aware of this. Our church lost its insurance. We had to end up going with the FAIR plan. We were originally paying $8,000 and change a year for our church and our property. Now it's $20,000 and change every year. My family and I lost our insurance up in Acton because of fire, and we had to kind of go through another process, thankfully not the FAIR plan. So what can you and your colleagues do to kind of address that situation going forward?
Yeah, and again, in our previous conversations, I am well aware of this. Myself having, I'm an Actonite just like you, and I got a call at the beginning of this year from my wonderful insurance agent who, I've known for a long time, and I got a message, hey, Suzette, I got to talk to you about your policy, give me a call. And I was worried that, like so many of my neighbors, I was losing my policy. And he's like, well, you're not losing your policy, but it is doubling. I think my policy since we bought our home has more than doubled. But how horrible was it that I was relieved, right? It's like that, I'm not losing my insurance, but it's more than doubling here. And for a lot of people who lose their insurance, my father actually just lost his insurance as well. The unaffordable FAIR plan is exactly that, right? It's not affordable. I have serious concerns about whether or not it's even solvent. And if there is any major fire disaster, if the money actually exists to pay for those policies. I don't think that it does, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
there are things that we have to, this is a top priority, I think, for me, given, our region, and we live in a high wildfire zone. We have to tackle this issue. We have to make the market more competitive. It's the only way you drive down prices is through having competitive prices. One. Two, in 2 years, our insurance commissioner in this state is turned out, and we're going to have the opportunity to vote for a new insurance commissioner. And we need to vote for an insurance commissioner that has solutions, that is competent and understands the insurance industry. That's not what we currently have, and I think it's a huge reason why we're in the situation that we are. The insurance commissioner controls so much of the decisions that impact the price of our policies. So that, I think, is going to be the key. We need some policy fixes here, but the key is going to be voting for the right person in 2 years.
It's amazing that we even have to consider this, considering that nobody ever thought about the insurance commissioner heretofore, but now it's such an important position that, we have to think about it. Well, Suzette, thank you so much for calling in today. I want to wish you and your wonderful family a Merry Christmas. Are you guys staying home? Are you guys going somewhere?
We are. We are having the family over. My brother-in-law's coming to the warm sunshine of Acton from South Dakota. So we're going to have some great fellowship and family time.
Well, you'll be in, as an Actonite and as an Actonite myself, we're going to enjoy Acton on Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas to you and your family. Thank you so much for what you do, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Pastor Cook. Talk to you soon.
All right, there goes Suzette Valladares representing District 23 right here in our area. When we come back, we're going to talk to Pastor Levi Secord, and we're going to try to answer this question. Christmas, pagan or not pagan? That is the question when we return here on your hometown station on Politics and the Pulpit. All right, we're back here live on Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, the Bishop of Santa Clarita. This is our final show of 2024. You can feel the Christmas spirit in the air. And speaking of Christmas, that is precisely how we're going to close our show today, talking about Christmas. And we have online with us today, a no stranger to our show, Pastor Levi Secord, who pastors Christ Bible Church up in the, I'm assuming, the cold state now of Minnesota, and would have been the state had Kamala Harris won, would have given us our vice president. So, Pastor Secord, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me again. I think it was September when we last spoke, and I can honestly say I've never been more happy that Tim Walz is my governor.
Well, I just think, I don't know if you've seen this meme on Facebook, but there's this meme that went around right after he was announced as the VP, where they juxtaposed him coming out and what's his name? The guy that Richard Simmons. Yeah, Richard Simmons. It's the funniest. I saw that and I said, that is exactly right. But now you get to enjoy him.
I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, it was on Facebook, but it was so funny. But anyway, Pastor Levi, how's the weather there in Minnesota?
We already had a few days where it was well below zero, but it's kind of gone back up to normal now. We're in the 20s, so it's not too bad.
Well, it's actually a balmy 80 degrees here in Southern California. We are on the backside of a Santa Ana, so we kind of tend to warm up during those times. But I'm sure you won't covet that.
I was going to be on your show, and he asked if I was flying out there, and I said I wish.
Well, we'd have taken you to the beach, Levi. So, well, listen, we are a week from Christmas. A week from today is Christmas. And just to kind of tee this up, Levi, I grew up and I have grown up in an independent Baptist background. And a lot of the pastors that influenced me always talked about the pagan undertows of Christmas and Easter. And just in the last 3 years, I began starting to say to myself, why are the two most prominent Christian holidays the ones that we're supposed to look at with a bit of a jaundiced eye? And are we to celebrate Christmas and embrace it with all of its festivities? Are we to embrace Easter with all of its festivities? Or should we look at it with a slight tinge of paganism. What say you about this topic? And is that right? Is there a segment of evangelicalism that says Christmas is pagan, Easter is pagan, can't celebrate them?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a growing chorus who are making those arguments, particularly online. But I mean, we need to be honest here that the online world often magnifies the dumbest voices out there, and so that's nothing new. We all see it. I mean, that's not to mean that everyone online's dumb. I mean, there's a lot of really good content out there. But there's been in the American church for quite some time this idea that to be holy is to be a grouch and grumpy and never enjoy anything. And I think if you read your Bible well, that's not where you're going to end up.
Well, I sent you something earlier from I would say a pastor Facebook friend. He's not a friend in terms of, I've never met this guy, but I have followed him on Facebook. And this is what he says. I'm going to just read a little bit of this. There are only 2 birthdays, and birthdays, of course, are in quotations. There are only 2 birthdays celebrated in the Bible, that of Pharaoh, Genesis chapter 40, and that of Herod, Mark chapter 6. And there was a death involved with each celebration. And then he goes on to say, and both men were types of the Antichrist. So should we not celebrate our children's birthdays, our spouses' birthdays, let alone the Savior's birthday?
Again, I think some people just want to make Christianity as unappealing to their kids and to everybody as possible. I mean, clearly the Bible does not forbid the celebration of birthdays. And again, you're going to have to define, what do you mean by birthday? Because I'm pretty sure that there were lots of celebrations on the actual day of birth of a lot of the people, and births within the promised line are a huge theme throughout the Bible, again and again, particularly miraculous births. So, yeah, I think it's something to celebrate. There's no clear forbidding of it in the Scriptures, and Paul speaks a lot about these type of things where one person wants to treat one day holy, one person wants to treat all days holy. He says, you know what, just figure it out, live as brothers, and move on.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I am. I have been studying Romans 14 probably more in the last 3 years than I have in the prior years. And I've embraced a lot of what Paul was writing there to the Roman Christians, who, of course, all had, they got saved out of a Roman culture, which, of course, probably had all kinds of weird observances. And so he's trying to deal with, some unity there within the body. So how does Christ Bible Church and Pastor Levi Secord approach the Christmas season? Do you look at it as the Advent season, or do you look at it as, well, we're actually celebrating the Norse god of the Vikings? What exactly does Christ Bible Church do?
Isn't that the thing, though? It's like, depending on who you hear, we're adapting Norse gods, or are we adapting Greek gods, or are we adapting Egyptian gods? Because I've heard all of them. And the reality of the
pick your gods, Pastor Levi. Pick your gods.
well, that's the thing. It's like, well, which one did Christianity take over?
Yeah.
Because it's like the Norse gods, well, that would be several centuries later, or the Egyptians, or the Romans. It's like, no, it's really, all of this is based on a really shoddy historical examination. And in case you don't know, listeners, like, anybody can put anything online that doesn't make it true.
Yeah, I
mean,
you have totally busted my world in pieces.
Yeah, it's yeah. So at Christ Bible Church, I mean, we do the traditional 4 weeks of Advent. The older I get, the more I enjoy them. I'm preaching through different prophecies of Isaiah right now. When we started the Advent series, in my introduction, I spent a little bit of time talking about this pagan movement, and I said, as Christians, you should celebrate Christmas. You should do it without any hesitation. And no, it's not rooted in paganism. There's zero historical evidence that the early church adopted paganism, which the early church was literally willing to die to not do. But somebody's trying to tell you that the early church adopted paganism and then just threw Jesus, a little bit of Jesus on it. It's like, have you ever read the early church fathers?
Yeah.
Have you ever studied church history?
Yeah, my thing is, I find it odd that the 2 greatest Christian observances, Christmas, the birth of our Savior, the incarnation, and the resurrection, the glorious resurrection of Jesus Christ, those 2, I would think that Satan would have his entire focus on causing there to be doubt and dissension between those very 2 prominent holidays.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's like, do I believe that Jesus was actually born on December 25th? Probably not. But there's this lie that goes on out there that, during the Roman time period, they were celebrating the birth of different deities on December 25th. Well, actually, they didn't actually believe deities were born like we do, that Jesus was born. They don't really believe the ancient pagan religions like that. So this is all just speculation. And the early church calendar was determined, December 25th was determined because of the Jewish tradition that they believed that a prophet died on the day he was conceived, and Jesus died on March 25th. So they believed he was conceived on March 25th. If you count 9 months forward, you get December 25th. Yeah. That's how the date was picked. Do I think he was actually born on December 25th? No. Do we have a better option? No. So we celebrated that.
Yeah, even at Freedom's Way Baptist, Levi, we just in the last couple of years we've embraced, or at least I've embraced, the observance of Advent, and all I did is basically define what Advent meant, which was basically the looking forward to the arrival of a notable person, right? And of course, that notable person for us is the Lord Jesus Christ. Our friend, our mutual friend, Andrew Sandlin, through his Center for Cultural Leadership, ironically, just today, put on Facebook a little take on Christmas as a Christian holy day. And he talks a little bit about what is the origin of the Christmas holiday. Jesus' birthday is obviously not observed in the Bible, so when did this observation start and why? I've not read every inch of this because I just got it literally maybe 30 minutes or so before the show. But you said you'd read it. I was just wondering, you'd mentioned there were some objections you might have had to Dr. Sandlin.
His main point I agree with. Yeah, his main point is it wasn't pagan in origins. He takes, again, there's different schools of thought as you study the history, and believe it or not, we don't have exhaustive historical records of when it started, when we started celebrating Christmas. But he points out that the early church, in the first couple centuries, contrary to that text you sent me from that pastor earlier, celebrated the birth of Christ at the festival of Epiphany, or Theophany, East or West Church, whichever one you want. We have records of that in the 200s and 300s very clearly. And that's January 6th is the festival of Epiphany. And his argument was that that Constantine moved it to the 25th for some reasons. The historical theologians I've read, for example, a professor I had at Southern Seminary, Dr. Greg Allison, wonderful theologian, author, he wrote the book called Historical Theology. His point is the one that I made earlier. No, the early church believed Jesus was conceived on March 25th, and that's why they picked December 25th. So, I mean, there's some disagreement within historical methods as to how the date was picked, but it wasn't because of paganism.
Yeah. One of the things I'd heard and read was that December 25th was the date of Roman Mithraism, the winter solstice, where, these big bonfires were lit to assist, the climbing of the sun in the sky and all that kind of stuff, and that the early church, kind of countered that, with the festival of Jesus being the true light, from John, that John says that Jesus is the light of the world. And that Constantine was the guy that kind of, put that up. And so therefore, you and I, with our Baptist background, or a bit of an Anabaptist background, we kind of recoil to that notion and go, Constantine, he just ran his crew through the river and got them baptized. So how do we, as with an Anabaptist background, how do we kind of swallow all of that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't put myself in the Anabaptist camp at all. I think the Anabaptist tradition is very messed up. I'm more of a Reformed Baptist myself. But yeah, I don't think we have to have. I don't think we have to have complete rejection of Constantine and what he did. Constantine did some good. He did some bad. I believe that there's a good case to be made that he was genuinely converted. And Christianity ended up taking over the Roman Empire through Constantine and then a few generations later. And I don't think that's bad. And I think that you do see that there was some cultural practices that the church kept around. Again, the historical record seems to suggest Christmas was not one of them. Mm-hmm. Now, did we set up different festivals in rivalry to them? Perhaps we did, but that's, again, setting it in opposition, not it being pagan in origin. Like there's a real difference between the two.
Yeah. So what does Pastor Levi and Mrs. Secord do in the lead up to Christmas with the Secord kids?
We've done different Advent things every year, different Bible studies with the kids, and I think the bigger thing Christians should worry themselves with today in celebrating Christmas is to not have it be devoid of Christ and not having it be pure consumerism and giving of gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are constantly talking to our kids about the incarnation, the story of Christ's birth, like the idea of having a church calendar that we are even redeeming the calendar year, the time of year, that we are to see all of the year in light of Christ and what he's done and what he is doing and what he will do. And so I think it's important to, as corny as it says, to keep Christ in Christmas, is to keep him center when we talk about this, that we don't celebrate Christmas like our unbelieving neighbors.
Now, have you had any kind of argument or debate, either online or in person, with somebody that would say, we're going to set aside Romans 14, and we're just going to argue with you and say that you are embracing paganism by celebrating Christmas?
How? No, I haven't had that debate, but I was just asking how. Like, how have I embraced paganism?
Yeah. Because I know that, like,
for instance, am I embracing paganism because I say Thursday, but though it was Thursday? It's like, that's stupid. Because I wear Nike shoes?
You know what I find? You
no.
know what I find funny is this. So, as much as I would have been intrigued by this article that I sent you earlier today, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you know, it's funny because the Jehovah's Witnesses, which of course we are not, although we are witnesses of Jehovah, but not quite in the same way they are, they don't celebrate birthdays at all, and it's kind of predicated on the same principle of this article that I sent you.
Yeah, right.
It's just funny that.
So I guess who's following the false teachers? I guess.
I guess exactly. And so, do you think there has been a bit more of a swing back here as of late to the celebration of Christmas and the open celebration of it without looking at it with a bit of a jaundiced eye? Do you think evangelicalism is making a bit of a swing back to that?
I don't know. Maybe it has more to do with what you grew up in versus what I grew up in. When I grew up, like, there was no question about celebrating Christmas, really. And now I'm running into more and more people who are like, we shouldn't. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
But I do feel like what we're experiencing culture-wide is that we've lost faith in all of our institutions because our institutions are found to be liars on so many different levels.
Yeah.
And so now we have people questioning everything, like absolutely everything. So anybody online who claims that they have some secret Gnostic knowledge for you that's been hidden from you your whole life, you're like, oh, yeah? Another one? And it almost becomes like a drug that people just keep taking.
Here's a quick question for you. Christmas trees, yes or no?
Yeah, I got one hanging up right now. It's got lights and ornaments on it.
You're probably looking right at it, you sinner. Actually, I have one right here to my left in our studios. In fact, I think, Jen, how many Christmas trees are in this place? Like 3, 4, 5 Christmas trees?
Yeah. I think
and
there's
anybody
3.
who points to Jeremiah 10 saying that's about Christmas tree is silly.
And by the way, I've got 2 in my home. We've got one in our sanctuary that folks love to take pictures. In fact, it's a 10.5-foot Christmas tree that's in our sanctuary.
Yeah.
It's actually in our foyer, not in our sanctuary. But believe it or not, there were a few years I did not put a Christmas tree up because there was contention about a tree. And I just thought it was just strange. So, Pastor Levi, we are about 2 minutes before we go to break. I want to get a quick take. What was Pastor Levi Secord's attitude like the night of November 5th in the great state of Minnesota?
Oh, man, I stayed up, about 1:30 when Trump finally got on stage and spoke. I was cautiously optimistic. Like I said to you in September, I was fairly confident that Trump was going to win, even though everyone else was trying to tell us that Harris was going to win. I was like, it's a psyop. That's not true. But yeah, we had some celebrations here.
If you want to read anything that Pastor Levi Secord has put out, you can go to Christ Over All and check out some of the articles. Have you got anything recently that you put out?
Oh, yeah, I just had something on Monday with Christ Over All on Handel's Messiah and how it talks about Christ's kingship.
Absolutely. That is one of the greatest pieces of music ever in the history of music. So, Pastor Levi Secord, the pastor of Christ Bible Church in Minnesota, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for calling in today and kind of putting a finishing touch, or if you will, a nice bow on this final 2024 show.
Thank you.
Pastor Levi, take care. All right, when we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll do something special here as we come to the last few minutes of this final show of 2024, when we see you in just a few minutes. All right, we're back here for our final segment on Politics and the Pulpit. And again, our final show of 2024. When we come back in January, we might go through a top 10 that people have put together of some of the most interesting things in 2024, and I'm wondering what your thoughts might be about that, considering that this has been an interesting year. Here we are closing out the year, and we're all worried about drones there in the state of New Jersey and why our government can't tell us exactly what they are. It's amazing. The government knows where I am probably 95% of the time. But yet they can't tell us anything very conclusive about these drones. We also think about earlier this year and the Olympics there in Paris and some of the things that happened where they had the image of the Last Supper that was kind of bastardized a bit. And so 2024 is definitely going to go down as an interesting year. We can't negate the fact that this was the year that President Trump had an assassination attempt on his life, first in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then a few weeks later on that golf course. And of course, we can't negate the fact that he won resoundingly his race for president, which of course is probably going to go down in history as one of the greatest political comebacks, at least of the 21st century, no doubt. Well, many of us grew up in the 80s, and we all remember watching A Charlie Brown Christmas. And one of the things the two things I liked about A Charlie Brown Christmas. The first is how that particular cartoon basically isolated and cornered Christmas for being too commercial. And I think that was probably one of the great messages of A Charlie Brown Christmas, is just how commercial Christmas was then, and how in many ways commercial still is today. Some of you are old enough in the hometown station crowd to remember when Christmas trees were aluminum. And if you remember in A Charlie Brown Christmas, there was a time when Charlie Brown and Linus went to the Christmas tree farm to pick out a tree, and there were all these aluminum trees. And if you remember, I think it was either Charlie Brown or Linus hit one of the trees, and you could hear the aluminum kind of plunk a bit. And it's interesting because it was shortly after that all of a sudden aluminum Christmas trees were not in vogue anymore. Pre-1965, everyone was buying them. Post-1965, nobody was buying them anymore. Why? Because they looked commercial. But I think the highlight of A Charlie Brown Christmas was when Linus, right after the play, the practice of the play, he basically said, listen, Charlie Brown was going nuts and saying, listen, what's the true meaning of Christmas? And Linus steps to the forefront, the lights go down, there's a spotlight on Linus, and he begins to read from the King James text, by the way, Luke chapter 2, verse number 8 and following, of which I will close out our show with this reading. And that again is Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 8, and where he says these words, and there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel of the Lord said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. And when Linus was done, he simply walked over to Charlie Brown and simply said, That is the true meaning of Christmas. Well, on this final show of 2024, we hope that wherever and however you spend your Christmas next Wednesday is a good one. I will give you a shameless plug. For those of you who may not have a Christmas Eve service to attend, Freedom's Way Baptist Church will be doing our annual Christmas Eve candlelight service at 6:30 p.m. next Tuesday, and encourage you to come if you don't have a place to go. I know that our tradition for my family is to stay home on Christmas Day. We don't really like to travel. I know people do. In fact, our board op who just walked out here a moment ago, she and her family will be going on a cruise, and hopefully they'll have a good time. But I really like staying home. I know that our state senator, who was just calling in earlier, is going to be in Acton as well. And wherever you spend it, whether it's at home or abroad or with family or with friends, or if you're alone, hopefully you're not, I hope you have a good Christmas day. And as Linus would say, keep in touch with the true meaning of Christmas. Remember, you can't say Christmas without the word Christ. And I would encourage you to just kind of get into the spirit of the season and try to steer clear of the commercialism. I think that message from A Charlie Brown Christmas still resonates almost 60 years later. Got some wonderful guests lined up for the new year. We have a gentleman that is going to be announcing his run for governor here in the state of California. Won't tell you who as of right now, but our objective is to get that individual here at KHTS, either phone in or in studio. And Lord willing, that'll be sometime towards the end of January of 2025. And we also, I would like to just say real quickly, I know a lot of our KHTS family out there that listen to this show and others also listen to men like Dennis Prager. I would encourage you to pray for Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager, I mentioned in a Facebook post today, took a pretty bad fall at his home a few weeks ago, and he is still, several weeks later, in the hospital trying to recover from something that is going to leave him rather debilitated for a very, very long time. He's one of the great conservative voices on radio and a great mind as well. And so, again, I'd encourage you to just say a prayer for Dennis Prager, because I believe that is going to take a long time. I was just listening to Charlie Kirk yesterday, and I guess Charlie had visited him at the hospital here just south of us in Santa Clarita, and was just taken aback by just how severe his injuries are, and his communicable skills are a little off as well. And so again, encourage you to keep praying for Dennis Prager. Again, this is Pastor Jerry Cook here on your hometown station, wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. We will catch you in 2025, and we'll have a lot to say about the inauguration coming up as well of Donald J. Trump. Merry Christmas. We'll see you next year on KHTS Hometown Station.